US President Trump launches his so-called Bird of Peace intended to help end the conflict in Gaza. We look at the devastation from ongoing floods in parts of southern Africa and how communities are trying to rebuild. And we explore what's next for Africa's health sector as the US officially exits the World Health Organization. This is Africa Live. Our welcome to the program. I am Peninah Karibe. Joining me in studio with a look at what's coming up in business news is Rama.
Thank you very much, Peninah. Here's what's coming up in the next half hour. The loss-making South African unit of ArcelorMittal inches closer to a bailout deal with the South African government. And the German Chancellor is calling for the implementation of Europe's trade deal with South American economies. We'll have the data and the details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Peninah.
Thank you, Rama. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is set to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow later on Thursday. Putin says they will discuss frozen Russian assets and President Donald Trump's so-called Bird of Peace. Witkoff said a lot of progress had been made in Ukraine peace talks on Thursday and that negotiations were down to one last issue. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Switzerland for talks with Trump. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova is in Moscow.
Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and U.S. President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. Russian officials stress that Moscow will not be rushed into any agreement on Ukraine under external pressure, with Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov saying that it is time for Kyiv to make decisions and take responsibility. Peskov added that Moscow will not comment on the substance of the talks with Washington, particularly ahead of Witkoff's arrival. Meanwhile, Witkoff claimed that the conflict had been reduced to what he called one solvable issue, a characterization that Russian officials have neither confirmed nor denied. The Kremlin also confirmed Russia's readiness to contribute $1 billion to a US-backed peace council focused on Gaza, with the funding due to come from Russian assets frozen in the United States. Peskov has made clear that such contribution would require the unfreezing of Russian state assets, emphasizing that the offer doesn't mean that Moscow has abandoned its demand for the full return of all frozen funds. Peskov stressed that frozen assets are Russian property and any discussion on their use must be tied to their legal restoration. Earlier, President Putin has said that the remaining money frozen in the US could be used for the reconstruction of the territories where the Russian special military operation is underway. Dasha Chernyshova, CGTN, Moscow.
Trump launched his so-called Bird of Peace amid concerns from European nations over its membership and its potential to undermine the UN. Trump, who will chair the Bird, led members in a signing ceremony in Davos, Switzerland on Thursday. While attending the annual World Economic Forum, he said that the Bird will work with the UN. The US had originally proposed it as part of a 20-point peace plan to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. However, the draft charter of the Bird makes no reference to Gaza. Meanwhile, China has reaffirmed its commitment to true multilateralism and says it will firmly safeguard the international system with the UN at its core. As that Bird of Peace ceremony was taking place, it was announced that the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt would reopen next week. The statement was made by a Palestinian official backed by Washington. Rami Al-Magari reports from Gaza.
Actually, the Rafah crossing terminal is very significant for the Palestinian population here in the Gaza Strip in terms of their travel that has been blocked over the past period of time of war. People, patients, thousands, tens of thousands of Palestinian patients are waiting to cross through the Rafah crossing terminal on their way to treatment outside of the Gaza Strip. Also, people have been stranded, like students who have to join their universities outside of the territory. Also, in terms of those coming back to the territory who had been stranded outside of Gaza during the wartime, want to return back to their families, to their places in the Gaza Strip. They have reacted well to the declaration by Trump about the Peace Council, but the only concern and the only reservation by the population is the joining by Prime Minister Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, to that council. And they believe it is so weird that Prime Minister of Israel joins this Peace Council while in fact Israel is an integral part of the conflict right at this part of the world.
Rescuers are searching through rubble in New Zealand after deadly landslides killed at least 2 people. The landslides in the country's North Island followed days of intense rainfall. Our correspondent Ray Addison reports.
Searching for survivors. New Zealand's emergency crews are working around the clock after tons of earth slammed into a holiday campsite near Mount Maunganui in the Bay of Plenty.
This huge tree crack and all this dirt come off like behind me, and then I look behind me and there's this huge landslide coming down, and I'm still shaking from it now. And Karibe coming like right behind me. It was like the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my life.
The landslide, triggered by days of exceptionally heavy rain, destroyed tents, camper vans and campsite buildings, leaving several people missing, including children.
It was like a freight train driving right past you, and we could not grasp what has just happened. And we looked outside the window and there was a caravan in the hot pool. And that's kind of our first sight on scene of what happened.
Early searches reportedly detected signs of life beneath the rubble, but crews were forced to pull back over safety concerns as unstable ground threatened further collapses. Heavy machinery has now been brought in to clear the debris, but officials warn conditions remain extremely dangerous. A separate landslide crushed a house in Welcome Bay, killing 2 people. Across the region, the storm has caused widespread disruption. Thousands remain without power, and many roads are closed, cutting off some communities. While weather warnings have been lifted for much of the North Island, authorities caution the risk is not yet over. Emergency crews say they will continue searching for as long as conditions allow. For families waiting for answers, the hours ahead will be agonizing. Ray Addison, CGTN.
Let's head to Southern Africa now, where severe flooding across Limpopo and Mpumalanga provinces in South Africa has left a trail of destruction, damaging roads, bridges and communities along major river systems. The iconic Kruger National Park and nearby villages have been ravaged by surging floodwaters that have cut off access, stranded workers and caused extensive infrastructure damage. The Ministry of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment says damage caused by floods in the park will take years to repair and cost millions of dollars. Authorities temporarily closed parts of the park last week after several rivers that run through it burst their banks as a result of heavy rains. Hundreds of people had been evacuated and no lives were lost. 15 tourist camps remain closed, with some completely inaccessible. Park officials say they are not too worried about the fate of animals who instinctively move to high ground to escape the floods, but have warned people living nearby to be careful about crocodiles swept beyond their usual habitats.
I am proud to announce that in the mammoth evacuation effort that SANParks has undertaken, not one single life has been lost. In actual fact, not even one single person got injured, and I think we really got to commend SANParks for that. The early indications is that the recovery cost for Kruger National Park will be in excess of 500 million rand. So it's more than R500 million that we will require to rebuild the park. So this will be a gradual reclaiming of whatever we can for the visitors, but the indications is that it will take as long as 5 years to repair all the bridges and roads and other infrastructure in the park.
Meanwhile, floods in Mozambique continue to cause widespread destruction. Rising waters have rendered roads impassable and left homes, schools and businesses submerged. Residents of affected areas are coming to terms with losses as they navigate waist-deep waters engulfing entire neighborhoods. CGTN's Crystal Onkeo has more.
These are the scenes in various neighborhoods in the capital, Maputo. Heavy flooding has severely impacted infrastructure, with a major road rendered impassable and a local church partially submerged. Shop owner Aurelio Justino Zita has been forced to wade through thick brown water to reach his shop. Floodwaters reached the display counters, damaging much of his stock.
The floods are in our home and our business. My wife and I are traders. She travels to South Africa to buy products to sell. This is the room. The items inside this room meant for the business are at the top of these stands. All that remains are the blankets and suitcases.
He says the damage has left him with an estimated loss of over $150. His business is also at a standstill, and although he has not sold anything in 6 days, he stays determined.
I won't give up. We must continue, with or without the difficulties. We must continue with the business because this is my sustenance. I am a retired person for 3 years now, so this just has to continue. We won't give up, but we will have difficulty, yes, because from this past week we started taking money from our savings, and to recover will not be easy.
Since mid-December, heavy rains have swamped large parts of Gaza, Maputo and Sofala provinces, raising river levels and prompting dam releases, worsening the situation. That's according to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Authorities say over 400,000 people have been affected, with numbers expected to rise as the rainfall continues. Crystal Onkeo, CGTN.
Well, the UN Children's Agency says more than half the people forced to flee their homes in Mozambique due to the floods are children. UNICEF warns the crisis is worsening existing vulnerabilities in a country where child malnutrition was already widespread.
Flooding is also becoming an annual occurrence. It's children of families who are hit the hardest. We, again, as UNICEF, are particularly concerned about the combination of malnutrition. In Mozambique already, before this flooding, around 4 in 10 children were suffering from chronic malnutrition, and the combination of that and potential for waterborne disease.
To Sudan now, where 65 people have been killed and scores injured in a drone strike in Al Obeid, the capital of North Kordofan state. Those killed were attending a funeral when the drone struck. Residents blamed the Rapid Support Forces for the attack. The reports say that the army and allied forces have positioned themselves on the outskirts of this city. CGTN's Sharon Baranga with more.
A somber mood engulfs Al Obeid in central Sudan after a drone strike hit in the dark hours after sunset. The once peaceful town is now full of debris.
That night, the drone hit the direction close to us. We started running for a while and we were looking around. Afterwards, we saw the drone destroying this building to the ground. When we came, we found the children under the rubble, under the iron, under the beds. Only God knows the state of the children. Bodies were all over. They used to be living people and now they are dead bodies. This is what happened.
The RSF has advanced in Kordofan region in recent months in its fight against the Sudanese armed forces. But the ongoing conflict has disproportionately hit the civilian population.
This incident took place after Isha. After the drone hit, they got us out and took us to the hospital. Some of us were injured and others were dead.
Hawaka Koko, a mother of 3, narrates the harrowing events.
We were sitting and all of a sudden the drone hit us. I went outside and felt something hitting me and I didn't know what it was. A girl held me and told me it was a drone. The yard was full of women, a lot of women.
Data from the UN Human Rights Office indicates that more than 100 civilians were killed in the first half of December 2025 across the Kordofan region. In Al Obeid, satellite imagery from the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab in the early weeks of January shows about 100 new burial mounds in 2 mass graves. Sharon Baranga, CGTN.
In the heart of Sudan's capital, Khartoum, the aftermath of nearly 3 years of brutal conflict is everywhere. Government offices lie in ruins and many residents are struggling to rebuild their lives amid the wreckage. But despite the challenges, a sense of resilience remains. CGTN's Sharon Baranga now brings us that story.
Khartoum shows the scars of nearly 3 years of brutal conflict. The finance ministry stands in ruins. Once a symbol of Sudan's economic power, now its courtyard is overtaken by weeds. Its walls pockmarked by bullets and the ground still littered with unexploded mines. For business owners, the damage goes far beyond broken buildings. Many are now facing crippling financial losses.
We have financial obligations toward companies. Before the war, we used to obtain goods from these companies either on deferred payment terms or through specific credit-based arrangements. When the war broke out, our warehouses were full of goods and the shops were also fully stocked. But these goods and appliances were looted and we lost everything.
Despite the danger, some parts of Khartoum are coming back to life. Workers are clearing rubble from damaged government buildings, yet much of the city remains deserted. More than a third of Khartoum's residents fled when fighting broke out in 2023. While over 1 million have returned since the army retook the city last March, many businesses have yet to reopen.
By God, the market has not fully stabilized yet. There is some movement, but it's slow. Before the war, business was active. But after the war, people come, but when they see the cost, they leave. As for the prices, of course, they have been affected after the war.
Despite the challenges, the Sudanese government is slowly resuming operations in Khartoum. Key government buildings, including the cabinet offices and central bank, are being refurbished. The UN estimates that rebuilding infrastructure will cost at least $350 million. But for the people of Sudan's capital, the road to recovery is already underway. Sharon Baranga, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll see how Morocco is positioning artificial intelligence as a long-term engine of growth. Guinea-Bissau's transitional government has announced that presidential and legislative elections will be held on December 6th this year. In a decree published on Wednesday, the ruling junta said all the conditions for organizing free, fair and transparent elections have been met. The announcement comes 2 months after the military seized power and follows the publication of a transitional charter published in early December. The charter bars the transitional president and junta leader, General Hota Ntam, from contesting the elections. The coup took place just days after Guinea-Bissau held a presidential election in November when incumbent President Umaro Sissoco Embalo was seeking a second term. Following his ouster, the electoral process was suspended. The U.S. has officially exited the World Health Organization 1 year after Trump signed an executive order announcing the withdrawal. Experts say that the U.S. exit could reshape global health cooperation, especially in developing nations. Countries like Indonesia, which felt the impact of vaccine inequality during the COVID-19 pandemic, could face similar challenges without strong WHO support. CGTN's Silkina Aluwalia reports from Jakarta.
This move by the United States is a major shakeup for global health. For developing countries like Indonesia, experts say there are real consequences.
The middle income country, usually majority, they face the classic problem, nutrition, about stunting or poor nutrition, and also about the sanitation. And also the most big problem for middle income country is about the communicable disease, TB, malaria, HIV, and etc. So in terms of health system strengthening, they need support.
The World Health Organization was created with a mission to protect global health. The United States is the agency's biggest donor, covering roughly 20% of WHO's budget. That funding supports programs in more than 150 countries, many of them developing nations that depend on the organization for vaccines, lab support, and emergency responses. Now, with President Donald Trump withdrawing the U.S. from WHO, experts warn the impact will be felt far beyond Washington.
Indonesia knows what it's like to be left behind in the race for vaccines. During COVID-19, wealthier countries had access to supplies first, while developing nations were left waiting. Now, with the World Health Organization facing uncertainty, there are concerns the same could happen again.
Fewer resources and slower global response could put Indonesia at risk. It could affect vaccine supply chains and emergency funding. In Indonesia, where health resources are limited, WHO provides technical expertise and lab support during crisis.
Of course, the current situation is impacting us, but we also have implemented anticipatory policies to address these issues. We can still conduct most testing activities, but some samples are still pending. However, we can still receive support from this at a national level. There will certainly be an impact, but we are always preparing for it and finding solutions to ensure activities are not interrupted.
During COVID-19, the WHO helped negotiate fairer vaccine access for low and middle income countries. Without U.S. funding, that kind of coordination becomes far more difficult, potentially delaying vaccine distribution and weakening outbreak response. Experts warn that developing countries, including Indonesia, may be increasingly unprepared. Sulkina Aluwalia, CGTN, Jakarta.
Morocco is rolling out a nationwide artificial intelligence strategy. Officials say AI is now a key driver of economic, institutional and geopolitical power. At the heart of the plan is the creation of a national network of excellence centers known as Jazari Institutes, a cornerstone of the Morocco Digital 2030 agenda. Adnet Shawashi brings us more.
The Jazari initiative is a nationwide AI network linking universities, startups and public institutions. Officials say it aims to create 50,000 jobs and train 200,000 students, positioning AI as a long-term engine of growth.
The Jazari networks, in a few words, are about connecting scientific research to the market and producing world-class made-in-Morocco artificial intelligence by building on academic research, startups, SMEs, the public and private sectors, and of course, incubation, scaling, and technology transfer structures.
As it sharpens its focus on AI, the North African country is drawing global tech events like the World Advanced Manufacturing and Future Mobility Morocco 2026, creating new opportunities for startups to showcase homegrown AI talent.
We are very pleased to be able to announce the first time ever we're bringing this event to Morocco, and we have selected Morocco as it is the start point for the advancement into Africa, Europe, and a pinpoint for everyone to be working and advancing.
The Mafqoudat platform illustrates Morocco's growing AI ecosystem, where startups use advanced technologies like AI and geolocation to deliver practical solutions, supporting the country's strategy to unlock more than $10 billion in economic value from AI.
With Mafqoudat, we're offering two solutions, one for B2C, for general public. They will be able to look for their lost items and connect with the people who found them easily. And for B2B, actually, we're offering it as a SaaS powered with AI always. And it helps actually B2B large venues like airports, train stations, and even government departments and administrations to manage easily, quickly, with a fast way, actually, the management of their lost and found departments.
By turning research into real-world innovation, Morocco is betting on homegrown AI to drive jobs, growth, and long-term competitiveness. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN.
Let's turn to Chad now, where a natural spectacle is currently under threat. Known as the Enedi Natural and Cultural Reserve, it stands out as a geological, ecological and historical treasure. However, over the years, human presence has depleted the reserve's animal population, leading to extinction of several rare species. Authorities are making efforts to address threats to the reserve's natural and cultural assets. CGTN Sophia Shimachero has more.
Spanning over 40,000 square kilometers lies Chad's sandstone masterpiece, the Enedi Natural and Cultural Reserve. Often referred to as Enedi Massive, its cliffs, canyons and natural archways have been sculpted by wind and water flows over millennia. Beyond its beauty, Enedi is an open book on human history with its 9,000-year-old rock paintings that tell the story of the Sahelo-Saharan people.
This delta played a key role in the socialization of this area, as revealed today by the presence of several archaeological sites that have been identified around this zone. These include the rupestre sites, the habitat sites, the paleo-metallurgical sites, and the lithic activity sites.
The reserve is also a refuge for relict species, most notably the West African crocodile. However, they are under threat from human encroachment. Poaching, livestock rearing and tree clearing for firewood is wiping out most of the region's wildlife.
This delta is a water source fed by an underground aquifer as well as a by runoff. Today, this site is home to desert crocodiles, West African crocodiles that are endangered worldwide.
Chad's government, in partnership with the African Parks NGO, has been working to reverse this decline.
We have a responsibility to monitor and manage wild animals, and at the same time we have a responsibility to create and reintroduce species that have disappeared from the reserve. As a result, we have the red-necked oryx, Adax oryx and dam gazelles, for example. We are also checking that the pastures and environments are suitable for introducing giraffes.
Enedi was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2016, raising its global importance. Authorities hope this, along with their efforts, will secure a future for the site for the benefits of the ecosystem and thousands of people who rely on the reserve. Sophia Shimachero, CGTN.
For decades, health systems in Africa have leaned on a delicate balance, a partnership between government funding and foreign assistance. From HIV treatment to malaria prevention to vaccines, that balance is now shifting. U.S. cuts to funding and its withdrawal from over 60 international organizations is sending shockwaves across health systems in the continent. CGTN's Enox Kolia reports.
We caught up with Dr. David Khawea, a health financial expert who works as a senior research fellow at the University of Nairobi's Center for Epidemiological Modeling and Analysis. He has just concluded an analysis on the immediate impact of external funding withdrawal on Kenya's health sector, commissioned by the country's Ministry of Health.
For us to be able to see the impact, let's go back and look at what is it they have been funding. I mean, the external funding generally has been about 45%. But when you look at the external funding, the US government has been contributing about 60% of that. So ideally, what we are saying is that if they stop, we are definitely going to be affected in many fronts, including the strategic diseases like HIV, TB, malaria.
Here in Kenya, external assistance supports life-saving commodities, thousands of health workers, disease surveillance systems, vaccines and nutrition programs. Khawea's team calculated what funding will be missing and what services it paid for. The result, a multi-million-dollar gap. Funding for HIV has fallen by $112.1 million in the 2025-2026 financial year. Tuberculosis funding has also dropped by $107.7 million. This affects testing, treatment and tracing, the backbone of TB control. Malaria funding has fallen too, though less sharply. Vaccines face a shortfall of more than $23.2 million. However, warns of the long-term impact.
Some of these things we may not see the impact immediately, because if you don't take medication today, it doesn't mean you die today. The effects may come much later. So what we are saying is that for the immediate impact, we see a decline in funding. But in terms of the health outcomes, those are things which will come like now, what we are talking about 1 year now down the road.
But the largest gap is not medicine, it is people. Thousands of health workers hired under donor-funded programs are paid through external assistance.
Some of the facilities have been relying on US-funded staff to the tune of 80%. You go to a facility with about 5 staff, 4 of those staff are funded by the US government. So when they stop, there are 2 things that will happen. Either the staff continue to work without pay, or the staff look for something else to do.
Experts have outlined urgent options: raising domestic health funding, integrating donor programs into routine care, including essential medicines in health insurance, working with private suppliers to lower costs, exploring new financial tools from health bonds to targeted taxes. But none of these are quick fixes.
We've had what we call verticalized programs, HIV program. We have a HIV doctor, a HIV nurse, a HIV clinic, and so on. Those things are now going away because what the government have realized that they need to integrate services so that instead of having a clinic for HIV, they have a clinic to offer healthcare. So you go there, you get all the services. That way, they end up saving on human resources.
For most African countries, the question is no longer whether external funding will fall, but whether health systems can survive when it does. Enoxikolia, CGTN.
This is Africa Live. Time now to shift our focus onto business news. Rama is here with the latest.
Thank you very much, Peninah. Here's what's coming up in the world of money. The loss-making South African unit of ArcelorMittal inches closer to a bailout deal with the government. And the German Chancellor is calling for the implementation of Europe's trade deal with South America.
No war, no one again, he can hold in guns. Word protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all. Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Let's start in South Africa. ArcelorMittal's unit in the country says that its parent company is in advanced talks with the state-owned Industrial Development Corporation, IDC, that could lead to a potential transaction. That drove its shares up by nearly 10% in trading today. The loss-making South African unit of the global steel-making giant has been battling weak local demand, high electricity costs and competition from local scrap metal recycling mini mills and imports. The company, in fact, mothballed its long steel plants last year in an effort to stem the losses. Both sides are hoping to find a sustainable solution based on a non-binding term sheet regarding a potential transaction. The steelmaker did not disclose the details of the proposed deal, and IDC was not immediately available to comment. The IDC has provided $160.7 million in loans to help ArcelorMittal South Africa remain as a going concern. South Africa's Nedbank Group has offered to buy a 66% stake in Kenya's NCBA Group in a cash and stock deal for $855.5 million. This is part of the lender's ambitions to expand its footprint in East Africa. Now, that transaction, based on Nedbank's stock price of 250 rands per share, will be settled 20% in cash and 80% through new Nedbank ordinary shares listed on the Johannesburg stock market. The bank said in a statement that the remaining 34% of NCBA shares would continue to trade publicly on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. If completed as proposed, NCBA, which is one of East Africa's largest financial services groups, would become a subsidiary of Nedbank, though it would retain its brand, local leadership and its separate listing in the Kenyan stock market. NCBA operates across Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania and Rwanda. It provides digital banking services in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. At the moment, it serves more than 60 million customers and has 122 branches across multiple countries. On to an interesting story from Libya now. A mobile phone dealer in the country's capital, Tripoli, has finally received a shipment of Nokia handsets ordered back in 2010 after an astonishing 16-year delay. The long-lost consignment includes classic button-based Nokia models like Music Edition handsets and early communicator devices that at the time were pretty much premium tech. The shipment was stranded due to the 2011 Libyan civil war and the collapse of the country's logistics and customs infrastructure. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim with the details.
Nizar Saleh is reviewing the old 2010 model Nokia phones that he just received after purchase 16 years ago. He still can't comprehend the situation.
I completely forgot about the mobile phones, so it was a very strange feeling when I received the batch. It was like a gift. I will give a few to my friends. They are obsolete and outdated phones, but I will keep them because they are like memories of that period. They have a sentimental value that I will cherish.
The supplier was unable to deliver the shipment, although the store is only a few kilometers away from Nizar's shop. A stark reminder of the impact of the conflict on trade and the economy in the North African country.
The economic situation deteriorated massively from 2014 onwards due to the infighting. Inflation and consumer prices hiked, and the local currency dropped from 1.4 dinar to the US dollar to 9.5 dinar to the dollar. The black market controlled the economy, and many businesses closed down.
Although authorities are painstakingly trying to restore stability in a country divided between East and West, there are signs of improvement. And it shows with Nizar, who moved into the auto market rather than the small mobile shop he had.
I changed the field because Nokia is not selling like before. I love cars and the market is booming here. So I opened a car trade and maintenance center. I did so during the coronavirus period, and thank God we are growing fast.
That doesn't deny there are economic frailties that need to be addressed by authorities. Libya heavily relies on oil for its revenues, but unstable production levels and a drop in international oil prices are slowing down the expensive rebuilding process. But that hasn't dampened optimism.
There is a big difference now than before. There is a relative stability, so people are opening new projects. The market is growing. There is an increasing demand on different products and services. Traders and small businesses are flourishing.
With an abundance of oil and mineral reserves, Libya has huge potential to become a future economic powerhouse once total stability is restored. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
On to capital markets now. Benin has raised $1 billion in a Eurobond and a commercial loan, becoming the first African country to issue sovereign debt in international markets in 2026. Now, the government says those funds will help to meet its financing needs for the year. CGTN's Ian Kinyua tells us more.
Benin has raised the $1 billion through two separate operations on international markets. It issued a $500 million international bond with a final maturity of 16 years that carries a coupon of 6.48%. This was made possible through dollar-euro hedging covering the full amount. Demand was strong, with the order book reaching £3.5 billion. Benin also concluded a €500 million international loan with Deutsche Bank, with a final maturity of 15 years and an interest rate equivalent to 6%, including guarantee fees. Authorities say the funds will contribute to meeting the country's financing needs, estimated at 1.2 trillion CFA francs, including domestic and regional borrowing.
It must be said that for several years now, Benin has been characterized by political stability, and when there is political stability, investors feel comfortable coming to invest in such a country. This explains why Benin does not often encounter difficulties when it enters the financial market. Another thing is that Benin has undertaken structural reforms to streamline the tax administration. And when we talk about streamlining the tax administration, that is what investors are looking for. They are looking for a place to invest with a return.
The government says the success of the operations reflects its ability to mobilize financing for projects under its government action program.
It should be noted that Benin has been making an effort to meet its commitments on the market for several years now. When Benin borrows on the market, it tries to honor its commitments, and that is what investors like most. A true test is one that has no difficulty in honoring its commitments on the national, international, and regional markets, and that is why in recent years, Benin has often had difficulty in the market in raising funds to attract investors.
Officials say Benin is seeking to strengthen its industrial base and attract more investment.
I think that to become the Singapore of Africa, Benin will have to redouble its efforts to strengthen the entrepreneurial system, further refine the economic entrepreneurial ecosystem, and raise the level of initialization. It's true that we have already made a start and are already at a fairly good level with the establishment of the Glo-Jibe Industrial Zone with the support of the Benin Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the Small and Medium-Sized Enterprise Development Agency. We already have the necessary tools for this, but it will take a lot of time and sacrifice to get there.
Benin's finance minister says public debt stands at 53.7% of GDP and that budget deficit remains under control. Ian Kinyo, CGTN.
Let's remain in West Africa. Over to Burkina Faso. Sweets made from local ingredients have become the hallmark of certain local confectioneries. As concerns grow over unsafe imported candies, local innovation is stepping up to meet demand. And they're turning local fruits and plants into delicious, healthy alternatives. With that report, here's CGTN's Najma Abdirizak.
Safiatou Bagaya has loved sweets since she can remember. But lately, a new taste has been winning her heart.
The taste is very interesting, a little spicy with a hint of sweetness. This sweet is truly a pure delight.
That pure delight is 100% Burkinabe, made with local ingredients Bagaya's palate is familiar with, like jujube, moringa, monkey bread, bissap, and pure honey. No preservatives, no chemicals, just the flavors of Burkina Faso brought to life by Mirielle Kini and her team.
I realized that there were lots of strawberry, pineapple and banana sweets on the market, and I thought to myself that Burkina Faso had products that deserved to be promoted just like any other products. So I wondered why there weren't any jujube sweets, ditorium sweets or balanite sweets.
For Kini, it all started with a passion to promote Burkina Faso's indigenous flavors. In 2020, she started Burkina Candy in Ouagadougou, leaving behind her day job as a computer networks analyst. Kini's choice of local ingredients is especially timely. On January 6th, authorities seized boxes of expired imported sweets near the main market in Ouagadougou, products that pose real health risks, particularly to children.
In our market, we find a lot of expired confectionery products, which means that consumers' health is at risk. On top of that, these products contain a lot of additives, preservatives and chemicals. Our product is an alternative to all that. It is produced locally, which guarantees certain qualities. We produce sweets without colorings or additives.
The battle to promote homemade sweet delights hasn't been easy for confectioners like Kinney. Imported sweets present unfair competition as they continue to flood the local market and undercut prices.
The main challenge is to get people to include it in their consumption habits. We have tried to align ourselves with market prices, which means that our margins and also retailers are much lower. So most of them agree because compared to imported products, which are much cheaper, they have a larger margin, which allows them to make more profit. So when we offer them a lower profit margin than that of imported products, they're not interested in the product.
Despite the challenges, Kinney and her Burkina Faso-made sweets only hope to continue their fight for a place on every local shelf. Najma Abdirazak, CGTN.
Outside the continent now, Japan's Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO if you prefer, has decided to shut down a nuclear reactor at the Kashiwazaki-Kariwa nuclear power plant after an alarm was triggered during a control rod withdrawal. This comes just a day after the reactor was restarted for the first time in about 14 years. Now, the utility firm is suspecting a malfunction in a control rod operating system, but after replacing the electronic components, the problem still continued. TEPCO confirmed that there was no external radiation leak, and they added that they will now shut down reactor number 6 to investigate the cause of this error. The reactor was the first TEPCO-operated unit to restart since the Fukushima Daiichi disaster back in 2011. The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz says he expects a provisional implementation of the trade deal with Mercosur even after European Union lawmakers voted to challenge that contentious deal in a bloc's top court. The move could delay the deal with South America by around 2 years and potentially derail it. Addressing the World Economic Forum in Davos, Merz said that he deeply regretted that outcome, saying that even though the European Parliament has set up another obstacle, he's determined that it will not stop the deal. Now, the European Union signed its largest ever trade pact with Mercosur members, that includes Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, on Saturday after 25 years of talks. But it still needs approval from the EU Parliament. Germany and Spain point to Trump's disruption of global trade, saying this deal is needed. It's essential, they say, to offset business lost to American trade policy.
Mercosur has been signed. And by the way, I deeply regret that the European Parliament has put another obstacle in our way yesterday. But rest assured, we will not be stopped. The Mercosur deal is fair and balanced. There is no alternative to it if we want to have higher growth in Europe. And most likely, this agreement will provisionally be put in place.
And we'll leave it there for the time being. Of course, there'll be more content coming up with respect to the World Economic Forum and Davos. But here's what else is on the program. We'll explore the fate of South Africa under the AGOA Trade Pact, as the US is deciding on extending that trade deal with Africa for another 3 years. But it could potentially leave South Africa out in the cold. Details on that and lots more coming your way at the top of the hour. For now, though, back to Peninah for the sport.
Thank you, Rama. You're watching Africa Live. Coming up in sports. Mohamed Salah returns as Liverpool edge closer to a round of 16 place in the Champions League.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Let's begin with football from the European Champions League, where Liverpool took another step towards automatic qualification for the round of 16 after beating Marseille 3-0 away from home. Egypt international Mohamed Salah made his first start since November following his return from the Africa Cup of Nations. Dominique Szoboszlai opened the scoring just before halftime with a free kick. Liverpool doubled their lead late on when goalkeeper Geronimo Rulli deflected Jeremy Frimpong's low pass into his own net before Cody Gakpo sealed the win in stoppage time. The result extended the Reds' unbeaten run to 13 matches in all competitions, lifting them to 4th in the table, while Marseille slipped to 19th. Liverpool's coach Arne Slot was delighted with Salah's return.
He knows his teammates and he knows how we want to play, and it says a lot about how big of a professional he is, that being away with us for a month in a different team, that he was so fit to play today, 90. I think he was close to a goal. Good ball from Cody. Usually that's a goal for him. Tonight it wasn't, but it didn't harm us because we scored 3.
In Wednesday's other results across Europe, Newcastle enjoyed a comfortable 3-0 win over PSV, while Chelsea edged Paphos 1-0 at home. Juventus claimed a 2-0 victory against Benfica, and Bayern Munich also won by the same scoreline against Union Saint-Gilloise. Elsewhere, Galatasaray and Atletico Madrid shared the points in a 1-1 draw. Elsewhere, China's under-23 men's football team has made history, reaching the Asian Cup final for the first time. The landmark achievement marks a major milestone for the young squad and has sparked excitement among fans back home. Here's CGTN's Siobhan Makal with more details.
China beat Vietnam 3-0 to qualify for Saturday's final. These were the celebrations at the end of the match, the players launching their Spanish head coach Antonio Puche into the air. They'd never got past the group stage before. And the coach told CGTN's Sports Scene their achievements are down to 3 things: 50 days of non-stop work, video binging and tactical tweaks. The team have been joking on social media about being greedy and not wanting to go home yet. 3 of the players are from the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, which is becoming a growing source of football talent. And one of those players shared this video on Xiaohongshu of the dressing room celebrations. Great scenes there, and someone who is sure to be cheering on the team in the final is this little guy here. He's proudly pointing out his older brother, Mutalifu Yiming-Kari, who's one of the players. And awaiting China in that final are Japan. The Japanese team have scored the most goals at the tournament, while China are the only team not to concede. And this fan says the final will be the sharpest spear against the strongest shell. FIFA President Gianni Infantino has hit back at criticism over ticket pricing for the 2026 World Cup, saying demand for the tournament has reached unprecedented levels. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Infantino said that FIFA had received a record 500 million ticket requests, with the majority coming from the US, as well as strong interest from Germany and England.
Normally you get like 7, 8, 9, 10 million ticket requests, mostly for the final, of course, so you have to make some draws for some games. This time we received over 500 million ticket requests. 500 million ticket requests. 500 million ticket requests. I mean, this is something not... And the tickets are not cheap. The tickets are not cheap. We were hammered. I was hammered, I should say, because of the ticket prices, because they are so expensive. And the main critics were from Germany and England, of course. Now, number 1 in ticket requests is US, number 2 Germany, number 3 England.
Meanwhile, as preparations for the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics progress, International Olympic Committee President Kirsty Coventry addressed the current state of relations between the IOC and the U.S. government. Coventry, who is closely monitoring the developments surrounding both the World Cup and the upcoming Olympics, acknowledged the absence of formal talks with the White House, despite the ongoing strong collaboration between FIFA and Trump ahead of this year's World Cup.
With my dear friend and colleague, President Infantino, he's got his FIFA World Cup in just a couple of months. So if we weren't seeing that good relationship, I'd be a little worried, right? And hopefully, as we get closer to the games, we will see relations continuing as they have been with the IOC, with the Olympic movement, in the United States, only getting stronger.
We switch to Formula One, and Lando Norris is still adjusting to being the world champion after picking up another honour in London. The 26-year-old McLaren driver, who clinched the overall title at last month's Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, was named the inaugural Autosport champion at the magazine publisher's 38th awards ceremony.
That's tough. Giving inspiration to other people, I struggle with. Enjoy it and keep trying hard. I mean, I was never one that was. I was never one to go, I'm going to be world champion one day. That was just not my attitude. It still isn't, kind of thing. But I always just kept trying. I think was the main thing. I kept working hard, kept building on my team around me, kept building on myself, and the work paid off. So I didn't think you have to necessarily just go, know you're going to do it or just believe in everything. But certainly, keep working hard and do everything you can. And that's what I did, and it worked off, so it paid off. So.
In tennis, Novak Djokovic defeated Italian qualifier Francesco Mastroianni 6-3, 6-2, 6-2 to reach the third round of the Australian Open on Thursday, continuing his pursuit of more history in Melbourne. The 38-year-old Serb is bidding for a record-extending 11th Australian Open title and a 25th Grand Slam crown overall. Djokovic took the opening set after breaking in the second game, then struck early again in the second set to keep Mastroianni under constant pressure. He sealed the second set with an unreturned backhand. Mastroianni briefly rallied in the third set by reclaiming a break, but Djokovic quickly raised his level to close out the match in straight sets. And that's it for this edition of Africa Live. Do send your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platforms. I'm Peninah Karibe. Thanks for watching Africa Live. Stand by for Global Business coming up next with Rama.